And welcome back to the channel. This is the ShopBirdy MCP enterprise level demo. This is an image that the ShopBirdy MCP server has generated effectively on the fly. And essentially what I've done is I've created a system whereby we can go through and generate lots and lots of images in sort of a batched process, and they can look like this. And each time we generate, we can change some aspect of the image. So it could be a plant, it could be adding a picture, it could be changing the pillows, for example. It's just a way to kind of create more variety using a few of the key set pieces, but within that, maybe changing a few different things to see which version that we actually like the best or we could use for our use case. So this is a very simple example, but I think it's very useful because a lot of times, generating one image using something like Photoshop would take you lots of time. And then there's a whole long process of then going through the approvals and getting feedback and making edits. With something like this, you can just effectively create a set of prompts, and the system, right now we have two workers going in parallel, and so they are programmed to effectively look at all of the different images you want to create. Each of the workers picks from the list of the task or the job that hasn't been completed yet, and we'll go and create that image. And to build this list, we could do it manually or we could do it programmatically. So the way that we're doing it is we effectively define some parameters. So a very simple example is we'll define the room parameters like a living room, bedroom, kitchen, dining room, and home office. Then we'll also have maybe a styling. So in this case, I want to do a Southwestern style and a tropical style. And we've given it just a few parameters to think about when we want to style something in a Southwestern style. So we might have adobe textures and terracotta tiles, for example. And in the tropical, we might use bamboo and airy linens. The other parameters we would use might be different kinds of cameras or camera lenses to have different depths of field and different sharpness to the images. So we might have a 24 to 35 millimeter eye level camera. We might have a 35 to 50 millimeter eye level camera, and so forth. Other parameters that we can play around with are things like the time of day or the lighting. So we could have daylight with a soft window key, or we could have soft morning, daylight or warm evening, just daylight or even midday daylight, and then afternoon daylight. So what the system does is it takes this sort of matrix of possibilities and it iterates through them. And you have two of these workers effectively assigned a task list, and they're going off in parallel, picking from the next task and completing it, and then updating that shared ledger, that shared task list, so that we don't have duplicates. That way, we can ensure that we have the most variety or most diversity possible, but have comprehensive coverage, and then we don't waste tokens creating essentially the same thing. Now, oftentimes, if you use only some small tweaks to the prompt, you might end up creating images that look great, but they look somewhat the same. So what you might want to do is have more variety of tweaks, more rooms, more times of day, different camera angles. You should have possibly more design materials and different palettes, so that you can have a very wide variety, a diversity of images. But this is what we're experimenting with right now. And so the nice thing about having a system like this is that, number one, you can set this up to run as an overnight process, or while you wait, right? You could go for a lunch and then come back and have 100 new images to look at, or 200 images to look at. In this case, we are running 100 images in a batch. We have 24 of them are done. There's 65 pending, 11 are in flight, and there's no exact duplicates. And then the variants we want to keep within an acceptable range. And those workers are each assigned and are now processing through, and they are creating these new images for us using the image generation model. They're also intelligent, so that if there's a rate limit, for example, with our Azure cloud, the system knows to have an exponential backoff, so it might wait before retrying, and then it might try again, and then based on that, it might wait again. And so that way we don't overwhelm the system, and we still respect within the rate limits, but we're utilizing as much as we possibly can because we have a job to do for a client, and we want to utilize the idle resources of this cloud compute that we have. So we can manage the rate limits. It doesn't, we don't get penalized only if you're doing something that's unacceptable, or if you're purposely trying to overwhelm the system. In that case, we have to be careful because we could have our account locked or suspended. But as long as we work within the reasonable range, this is a very typical case for software development. You want to call a service and you expect a response within a reasonable amount of time. Sometimes it takes longer. You're waiting around trying to figure out what is going on, so you try again, and then that ends up doubling the load. So eventually, and then there's other forces, there's other factors that affect how quickly that response comes through. It could be the availability on the other side. It could be network congestion. It could be an issue within the code. So there's various things, but having a system like this that can intelligently create prompts across many different categories, mixing and matching them, tracking the results, doing some form of verification for you, and having multiple workers. So in this case, we're spinning up 2. You can imagine for high volume clients, we might spin up 10 workers or even 100 workers, right? So depending on how important that job is, what's the turnaround time, what's the volume of images we need to create, all of those parameters we can adjust. And then while you're waiting for the job to be complete, you can even see the preview here of the thumbnails, and you can actually open them. But by default, these images are private until that you are ready to use them. But they would look something like this. And then you could verify, does this look good for you? Is this what you're looking for? Is this the look you're going for? In this case, we're not using our most high quality image because we want to test this. So this is probably the mid-range. There's probably 2 higher levels of fidelity that we can get on top of this. But I think this is a good place to start. The other factor we need to consider is that when we're working with very large images or very high quality images, sometimes we have limitations in terms of images that we can upload. Like say, for example, YouTube thumbnails, I believe cannot be larger than like 1 or 2 megabytes, right? So each one of these images, if you're using the high fidelity, high quality, they might be 3, 4, 5 megabytes. So you wouldn't even be able to use that for YouTube unless you then converted it and downsampled it or scaled it down. So that's the other thing that we have to consider is, are there any file limits, file size restrictions? Because not only do we want to keep a high quality image there, but we also want to make sure that people can actually load it. When they browse our website, we don't want to be overwhelming the website with huge, heavy images. We want them to be fast. So there's a balance between the fidelity and the size, and the quality, and so forth, and the speed. But the good thing is that ShopBirdy has these tools now, and by creating these, we are building out our own sort of gallery. So the good thing about that is now we have a bunch of reference images that we can use. And I've already done, yesterday I did a 200 images using different styles of homes. So we use Scandinavian style and industrial and modern and coastal. And then for today, I'm going to try a new 100 styles. In this case, we're doing 50 in the Southwestern and 50 tropical. And the idea there is to kind of have a wide variety of different styles and use some common parameters. So use some common ways of constructing the prompt so that even though we have a whole bunch of different style homes, it all looks like it's coming from essentially the same designer or the same place. So it would have consistent framing and consistent kind of lighting styles and colors and gradients, which is very, very helpful, which is also very different from a stock photo service where you're pretty much looking at pictures by individual photographers. So one photographer might have their own style of pictures that they take in Bangkok or New York City, for example. Another photographer might have a totally different style. It's still in Bangkok or still in New York, but it's just a different style. They might use a different camera lens or a different film technique, all of which is perfectly fine and great to have. But the thing for a business is normally you want to have consistency. You want to have consistency because you want customers to become comfortable with what they can expect from you. And you do also want to have elements of surprise and delight, but that has to, I think, work within your overall brand. So if these are within your brand, or let's say you're going through a brand refresh, having that brand guideline or having that design style kind of gives the company a North Star in terms of how do we message our value proposition? What are the types of customers that we are looking for? When we produce content, when we produce media, when we produce advertising and marketing, what are those consistent things that we want to always have be there? And you can see that brands take the brand equity value of their business very seriously because they spend a lot of time developing a nice logo or slogan or a motto, and people begin associating words and products with that brand. And so having that consistency, I think, is really important. But also being able to create and try and test within different markets, for example, how you localize your brand messaging or your products is also very useful. So in this case, we are just picking up a few different styles here. We have, as I mentioned, tropical, Southwestern, there's modern, there's industrial, there's coastal, there's Scandinavian, and then within that, there's also different rooms. So there's kitchens, and there's bedrooms, and living rooms, and bathrooms. And even within that, we could have, for example, different times of day, or different camera angles, and different things that we can focus on. Maybe it's a whole room shot. Maybe we want to take a picture of something specifically on the table, for example. Maybe we want to have kind of like a fisheye lens view, or maybe we want to have like some nice depth of field effect. So just like with your phone camera, you have different portrait, landscape, you have different filters. You can experiment with all of that here within the ShopBirdy, I call it media content platform, media creation platform, but also MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. But if you can think about it as a media content platform or something similar, then you can imagine like this is essentially a worker for your team that you now just recruited, and you can pay for a very low price on a relative basis, right? I think we're only going to be charging like $1 per image. So if you wanted to do 100 images, we maybe charge you $100 for that. And so that is maybe like the cost of less than 1 day's work for a professional photographer or graphic designer. So it's not like this is replacing them. It's just like suddenly you have a whole new team member who does essentially a whole week's worth of work within like an hour, for example, or half a day. And their job is to help all the other team members. So suddenly all the other team members have more resources that they can use or utilize. That gives them more leverage. So some of the mundane rote work that they would have to do otherwise is now being alleviated by having ShopBirdy as part of the team. Suddenly, when they come into work and they check their email inbox, there's a link to the day's new gallery. And here are a bunch of ideas, here's a bunch of concepts, here's a bunch of ready-to-go images to, if nothing else, just inspire you or giving you a great starting point. On top of which you can build, you can then refine, you can say, we really like these styles, and then the next day you run another batch, and every time you're iterating through this, you are making your outputs more high quality. And then as the underlying models improve, that is going to just lift up the quality of all your work going forward into the future. So having a system like ShopBirdy is very, very effective. The other thing you can do is by doing these runs, you can start to play around with some of the parameters. If you realize that having only 50 of these is not enough because we have 5 rooms, and if we only have 10 images per each room, some of the images might be too similar, so we might want to expand that. Or we might want to add more variety, more creativity into each of those room prompts. So we would give the prompt system even more parameters. So in addition to just these cameras and these lightings and this composition, we might expand that. And it's really easy to do that because, again, you can just use generative AI to ask it to refresh this list or expand this list or add additional items to this list or add a new style, all of these kinds of things. And then eventually it would be easy for you to do that from the dashboard itself. But right now this is a supervised run. So essentially you send us the job, you send us the matrix of what are the, again, the different things that you want. So you want to have rooms, different styles, different products, different times of day. So this forms kind of like a matrix. And what we do is we convert that into a database of jobs or tasks. And we sent workers to go through and pick up each of these tasks in whatever order. But the key point is that it's a kind of a ledger. So the worker 1 already knows that worker 2 has claimed this task or is already working on that. So it can look for the next unclaimed task. And then worker 2 can see that worker 1 is working on that task. So it'll pick up from the shared list of jobs to be done or task list, which I think is really helpful. So essentially now you have multiple agents going through here, collaborating, taking your plan, taking your list of tasks and iterating through them, which it does pretty quickly. As you can see here, we're already about 60%, 64% of the way done. And this will eventually wrap up here very quickly. Let's just look at one more. So again, I'm using the medium quality. You can see that there's a lot of different things in this picture, a whole bunch of details. So we have bowls and plates and glasses and lots of plants and other sort of design motifs, bamboo and rattan and linen sort of curtains. So this is effectively what we defined as a tropical style. Now you might want to say, let's update that. Here are some references. I want to use these different colors. So yeah, this may be tropical, maybe Miami, right? Florida. You can kind of see the Miami Dolphins colors here, but your idea of tropical may be like South Pacific, for example, or elsewhere. So we can just adjust that as our styles and our parameters, and just give it a few more things to do. But this is just a quick one to start with. We can expand this out. We've only defined here 10 different homes, but we might want to have 100 different homes or 200 homes. And we have here 5 rooms, but we might want to have other types of rooms, right? Here are 2 styles, but there could be 10 styles, for example. And we are defining here maybe, looks like there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of lenses. We might experiment with that as well. And then the time of day, most of them are all in the daytime. You might want to try making some evening or twilight pictures, for example. So there's so much more you can expand upon this, but the great thing about it is that as a proof of concept, this pilot is working flawlessly. It's end-to-end integrated with Microsoft Azure. It works with OpenAI's models running on Azure. It has integrated with Microsoft Storage for your images, and you can set multiple workers according to your needs, how fast you need the work to be turned around. Because if we do this in parallel, we can get the job done much faster by splitting the tasks among multiple workers, and then that can give you a faster turnaround time. If this is something where you can afford to wait, or you don't need it right away, you can schedule it, and we can do it as a scheduled batch job, whereby the tasks don't need to be completed immediately. They just need to be done by a certain date, for example. And then in that case, we can shift our priorities around in terms of what available compute we have, how many available workers we have, and then how quickly we can turn around the work. So again, this kind of job or task would take about $100, I guess, and you would get 100 images, right? And I really encourage people to reach out and work with ShopBirdy on how we can create. There's lots of, I think people are still asking themselves, why do I need 100 images? Or why do I need 1,000 images? Or why do I need 100,000 images? But I think the important thing there is that it's not that you're going to necessarily need to upload all of these or manage all of these by yourself. I think the key point here is that if you're doing any kind of content and you're doing it in multiple markets, for example, or you have multiple product lines, multiple types of customers, suddenly with this kind of tool, you can set these unique parameters and styles and design for each of those different segments, each of those cohorts. And then if you're doing things like moving images, like video clips, for example, well, a video clip that is 25 frames per second necessarily means that there's 25 images every second of video that you're watching. They just happen in very rapid succession. So if you're making videos, you might want to have a bunch of keyframes, and then you could use the video model to animate them. And then to kind of control the drift or kind of give it more guidelines, you give it more keyframes. So if you gave it like the beginning and the end, and you ask the model to fill in the middle, well, it might have a lot of creative freedom and take a lot of liberties to do that. If you wanted to be very precise and say, I'll give you every fourth second, for example, and then you can just fill in the rest in between, then it only has to do like 2 or 3 frames for every 1 or 2 that you give it. So that kind of keeps it on track a little bit more. So there's a lot of different ways to think about using a lot of images or creating a lot of images for your business or for your customers. Other things could be like personalized education, right? If you're having a study topic, you could drop in your study book or your textbook, and you could have if there's 100 pages in the textbook, why not have 100 images, 1 image for every page, for example? I mean, I'm pretty sure people would be able to would flip through that book much more consistently, reliably, faster, because now there's an image for every page of text. There's an image, so that gives them a quick reference to basically summarize or compress all those words into an image. And so that can be a way for people to browse, is not just only browsing by reading text or words, plain text, but actually seeing nice images that complement the words. So we have here this. So again, we are defining kind of like eye-level camera. We're giving it a few different parameters. We're saying in this case, we want the medium quality. We don't need high or super high, although we could do that. So you're going to have some things that almost appear like a bit of a painting slash photographer or photo. And then so like depending on your use case, like this as a thumbnail would work really well. If you needed this as a super high resolution because you wanted to print this out, you might need to use our high quality service. But I just wanted to give an example here. So I think this company is called DD Print Center, and I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with like print shops and how they charge like based on per item printed. But you can think about like all the different use cases of something that you would print, right? It could be a menu, a postcard, posters, brochures, stickers, calendars. So let's say like we wanted to let businesses put a sticker on their window, right? We might want to partner with a company like a DD Print Center or other print centers and allow clients to create very nice marketing materials and advertising materials for their business, both digitally in the form of social media and all of their online channels, but also enhance their physical location, make their shop, their restaurant, their store more appealing, more informative to customers, like having nice signs and designing these signs that give good information, like here's where the produce section is, here's where you can get information about rebates, and here's where you can sign up for programs or, and other offers, for example. So in a similar way, that's kind of what the ShopBirdy service does, is that we'll have a price per image generated, and then we will complete the tasks, and once the job is done, all images are processed, we hand you this wonderful new gallery, or you have access to this gallery and it's always updated for you. Or let's say you want to display these images on your website and you just want a single URL, and then you want ShopBirdy to decide which image to populate. So on your website, you just embed one image or the whole catalog of images. And then every day, you might want to tweak that image or adjust it somehow. So you could just give us a new prompt, a new direction, something like that, and we'll just make sure that when we generate them, we now take into consideration your latest feedback. So this is essentially almost done. We've done 88 out of 100. There's 12 in flight, and we'll just make sure that it looks like the workers are still going. After retries, we are able to continue, and so all this looks good. So I hope you found this video interesting, and I'm very excited about the future of content, because my big takeaway after working in the, let's say, digital business, online business, software business, spending a lot of times on social media and even in gaming, is that right now users are overwhelmed with content. But I kind of feel like the quality of the content really matters a lot. It's sort of like your media diet. And whatever that means, whether you're talking about the image quality or the educational content, or just is it making our life better? And so I think like what we want to do is we want to inject more high quality content into our daily feeds and into our lives. And I think it's really hard for many people to stand out, to compete. And there's just this rush of content every day. And maybe there's high production costs, or you have to have some distribution to get noticed. I think if we start making it easier for people to express themselves and create and have good ideas and create high quality content, I think it would just benefit all of society to just have really well-designed things, content that is very informative, right? Like education does not have to be boring, right? We don't have to have this trade-off of I just want to watch entertainment that's mindlessly, in America, we call it brain rot. It's like doing nothing for our mental stimulation. It's literally just flipping through like randomly and just seeing weird stuff or just eye-catching stuff, and it has no rhyme or reason. And at the end of it, you feel drained of all your dopamine because like, you've just been watching all this random stuff, you can't piece it together, and you just end up walking around looking unhappy, confused, whatever. I think it's because their systems have been so drained because they can't focus on anything, they can't achieve their goals, they can't follow through on plans because they're just constantly distracted by millions of notifications coming from all over the place. When they go to see content, it's just random stuff from everywhere. And it's like every day you're consuming this types of content, it's not really helping us that much. If anything, it's kind of triggering, or it's making us feel unsatisfied or inadequate, or we feel like we have to compete, we have to look good, we have to do things in a certain way, we have to match the current style. And I just feel like, is this really the future that we really wanted? I think I'm much more excited about an AI sort of Gen AI future where it doesn't even matter if this image is real or not. What's important is, like, do you think it's a good design? Like, do you like this? Is this something that you would like to see more of, possibly even in your real life? And then how do we help people like make these creative designs realized in their life? How do we help them visualize and then help them achieve? I think that's much more important, or that's a greater use of this image generation model. So user-generated content has helped people get distribution and get their brand out there. But 1% of the people generate content, 99% of people probably consume the content. So it's a very small, the influencers are a small percentage of the population, content creators, of the overall media consumption. So if user-generated content eventually becomes, if AI-generated content, so designed content, designed for specific users, becomes a new form of media, I think that could be very interesting. And if suddenly you don't need to be an expert in Photoshop to create very nice designs, that would help democratize creativity for people. And the thing about design is that, like, once you get used to a certain level of design, you're always looking for good design in everything that you do. So it becomes almost like a philosophy. You want to have a well-designed lifestyle, well-designed work that you produce, well-designed, well-planned communities, and so forth. So I think everything comes down to great design, and I've always believed in it. And in terms of content, a lot of the content we have today is not really designed, or it's actually designed to create kind of reactions in us, in our psychology. And I think what it's doing is it's making people exhausted. I think it's just exhausting, and it's not it doesn't empower people. It's not helping people. It's just kind of like rage baiting or making people jealous or whatever it might be. And then the educational content, a lot of times in some cases does very, very well, but it's just not a lot of it being produced. And in other cases, people want calming content, right? They want to listen to some tranquil music. They want to relax. They don't want to be constantly overwhelmed by shocking information and, drama and this kind of thing. I think so. I'm very interested in, and this is the direction I'm going to steer ShopBirdy, is in producing high quality content that actually helps people. It's not going to be designed. I'm not going to work on things that are going to try to, affect people negatively. I really want to focus in on high quality design that can actually benefit people, benefit society. Because if we want to create a better world, we have to design our places, our products, our lifestyles in such a way to help us achieve that goal. We have to plan for that. And a design is kind of like the crystallization of a plan. It's kind of that first step. So, whether it's a mood board or visualizing your goals, I think manifesting is real, and I think we can do that through design. And I hope ShopBirdy can be a very useful and valuable tool for people to design their perfect life, design their perfect world, in as much as we actually can. This is 95% of the way done, so that's basically done. Absolutely no errors. It was perfectly, and we pretty much got it all done within while we're recording this video. So you can be thinking about having these kinds of tools doing work for you, working on your behalf in parallel while you do other things. Maybe while you are educating yourself, or you are teaching yourself a new skill, or you are reading a book, or listening to a professor or a teacher or an artist explain their process. You can have AIs, agents, helping you do work, so that frees you up to better yourself, right? You can still oversee the agents, you can still monitor and make sure that they're doing the right thing, but other than that, you now have additional freedom to enhance your life. And I think that's actually the right way to think about this, because if we imagine we're building towards a future, a utopia, if you will, we would have this kind of renaissance of creativity, of artistry, of design for people, not just designing for shock value, but designing that is actually beneficial to society, that actually makes people want to live in a place, want to be in a place, and make their lives better. So I think if AI is going to create new prosperity that we can all share, I think it would enable us to be more creative and be more thoughtful in our design. And just think about having just nice pictures to look at. Just imagine what that would be like, to just all of a sudden everything just looks better. Like you just see things and it just looks nice. It looks great. It looks beautiful. It looks well crafted, well designed. That, I believe, is kind of like the future. And I think we'll start to kind of train ourselves to think with sort of a design mind or design thinking. And that goes through everything: incentive design, software design, services for citizens design, everything. So I think we're getting close. I think this is kind of like this is a sort of a preview of where I think things will go, and I hope that ShopBirdy can play a small part among key industry titans. All right, thank you guys very much. It looks like the dual worker setup has finally completed. Both workers have done 49 out of 50%, so we are almost at 100% done. We are just tracking 2 more tasks, and the job will be done, and that is very exciting. Any moment now. This is the finale. 99 out of 100, and worker 2 has 1 more task, staging new 76. And that's what's great about this, is that this is now happening on a ledger, so you can trace and track what were the prompts and how did we create this image and at what time and which worker and so forth. So it's great for audit trail in case you like that particular image and you want to figure out, how do we do that again? Like what did we, what worked to create that, and like how do we, like that seemed to work really well. Let's figure out how to do more of that. That seems to be awesome. All right, so we are almost there. Staging new 45. Again, this is something where you just sort of have to coordinate with lots of systems. Like this request is going around the whole world, to the other side of the world, to generate on a data center and then get sent over to our screen. And we have to route all of that, and we have to pipe that through the pipeline. But it should be completed any moment now. Just waiting. It's keeping us in suspense. 99 out of 100. Right? There's even studies in psychology in terms of how you design loading bars and progress indicators to keep people to keep them sort of glued to the screen, or to give them some indication of that you can actually go away for a few minutes or for a while. This is going to take a while. Come back, and check in, or we'll notify you when it's ready. But There's a lot of different data at play here to make this happen. And sometimes the only thing you can do is just wait. And other times you want to kick off another parallel task because sitting around waiting isn't helping anyone. Okay, cool, done, 100%. That's it. Thanks, guys. Bye.